In the year 30 and 37, Europe stood on the edge of a conflict that would reshape kingdoms, change warfare forever, and give birth to modern national identity. This was not a single war, nor did it last exactly 100 years. It was a long, brutal struggle between two powerful rivals, England and France, known to history as the 100 Years' War. For more than a century, kings rose and fell, armies marched and burned the countryside, and ordinary people suffered under the weight of endless war. At its heart were questions of power, inheritance, pride, and survival. This is their story. The roots of the conflict began with a death. In 1328, King Charles IV of France died without a male heir. The French throne now stood empty, and two claimants emerged. The first was Philip of Valois, a French nobleman and cousin of the dead king. The second was Edward III of England, grandson of a French king. Through his mother, Edward believed the crown was rightfully his. But the French nobility rejected him. They argued that France could not be ruled by a king whose claim came through a woman, worse, an English king. But tensions grew. France supported Scotland, England's enemy. England controlled lands in France and resented French interference. Finally, in 1337, Edward III made a bold declaration. He claimed the French throne for himself. War was inevitable. England was smaller than France, with fewer soldiers and less wealth. But it had a secret weapon, the longbow. English archers trained from childhood. Their bows could fire arrows with deadly speed and power, piercing armor at great distance. In 1346, Edward III invaded France. The French army, confident and proud, marched to meet him near the village of Crécy. The French knights charged on horseback, wearing heavy armor, symbols of medieval honor. But the ground was muddy, and the English archers were ready. Arrow after arrow darkened the sky. Horses fell. Knights were crushed beneath their armor. The French army collapsed. Crécy was a shocking defeat and a warning that traditional warfare was changing. Soon after, the English captured the port city of Calais, giving them a permanent foothold in France. As war raged on, a far greater enemy appeared. In 1348, the Black Death swept across Europe. Entire villages vanished. 1/3 of the population died. The war paused, but suffering did not. Fields lay abandoned. Trade collapsed. Survivors faced hunger, fear, and despair. When fighting resumed, it was harsher than ever. Armies no longer fought only knights on battlefields. They burned villages, stole crops, and terrorized civilians. This strategy, Gajet Kabasi, aimed to break the enemy's economy and spirit. War had become total. In 1356, Edward's son, the Black Prince, led English forces deep into France. The French king, John II, marched to stop him. Near Poitiers, the armies met. Once again, French knights charged bravely and once again, English longbows destroyed them. King John II was captured alive. An unimaginable humiliation. France descended into chaos. The king was imprisoned in England. Nobles fought among themselves, and peasants rose up in violent revolts, known as the England seemed unstoppable. In 1360, both sides signed the Treaty of England gave up its claim to the French throne for now but gained vast French territories. France paid a massive ransom to free its king. For a time, there was peace. But peace did not last. Under King Charles V, France changed its strategy. Instead of seeking large battles, French forces avoided direct confrontation. They harassed English supply lines, retook castles, and used patience instead of pride. Slowly, methodically, France regained its lost lands. By 1380, most English victories had been erased. The war entered a new phase, less dramatic but no less deadly. In 1415, a young and ambitious king came to the English throne. Henry V, charismatic and ruthless. Henry believed destiny favored him. He revived England's claim to the French crown and invaded once more. That same year, his army met the French. Outnumbered, sick, and exhausted, the English should have lost, but rain turned the battlefield into mud. French knights sank under their own armor. English arrows flew relentlessly. Agincourt became one of the greatest English victories in history. Henry V was now a legend. After Agincourt, England occupied much of northern France. The French royal family was divided by civil war. In 1420, the Treaty of Troyes declared Henry V heir to the French throne. He married the French king's daughter. France appeared defeated, but fate intervened. In 1422, Henry V died suddenly. The French king died shortly after. The English crowned a baby Henry VI as king of both England and France. Many French refused to accept this. And then, from a small village, came a girl who would change history. Her name was Joan of Arc. She was 17 years old, uneducated, and claimed to hear voices from God telling her to save France. At first, she was mocked. But France was desperate. Joan convinced commanders to let her accompany the army. Dressed in armor, carrying a banner, she inspired soldiers with fierce faith. In 1429, she led French forces to lift the siege of Orleans, a turning point in the war. Victory followed victory. Joan escorted the French prince to Reims, where he was crowned King Charles VII. France had hope again. Joan's success frightened the English. In 1430, she was captured by Burgundian allies of England and handed over, put on trial for heresy. She stood alone against powerful judges. She refused to deny her visions. In 1431, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. She was 19 years old. But her death did not end her influence. It strengthened France's resolve. France continued to modernize its army, using artillery and gunpowder. Castles fell. English forces weakened. In 1453, at the Battle of Castillon, French cannons crushed the English army. The English lost their final major territory in France. The 100 Years' War was over. England retained only the port of Calais. France emerged united, stronger, and more centralized than ever before. The 100 Years' War transformed Europe. It ended the age of knights and chivalry. It introduced modern armies and national identity. It strengthened kings and weakened feudal lords. It left deep scars on ordinary people. Most importantly, it created the idea of France and England as nations, not just kingdoms. What began as a fight over a crown became a struggle over identity, and its echoes still shape history today.